I wrote this while at work, the dedication. So when I think about game-changing BL dramas, I always see the same series coming up in my head. These are the ones that introduce a new concept, bring a new audience, or break free from usual stories. And in a way, these are the backbone of the BL landscape today. So today I wanted to pay tribute to these trailblazers by talking about them a little bit. So I wouldn't consider Hormones a BL since the love story between men and the love story between women aren't the main storyline of the show. That being said, it's still the first mainstream show to have main characters be gay and bi in Thai dramas since it started airing in 2013. And don't get me wrong, Hormones is incredibly flawed. All three gay or bi male characters end up not only where they're heartbroken, but also they are the only one who do not end up with a significant other by the end of the series. But the lesbian and bi female characters do end up together, and for me that is not a coincidence. So Pooh is probably the first explicitly bisexual character in a Thai drama, though of course they don't use the word. He doesn't even get to realize it, but it's very explicit through his interaction with both the same gender and the opposite gender. So throughout the show, Pooh is presented as someone who doesn't know what he wants, who changes whom he loves quite often and breaks the hearts of multiple people in the process, and who is just plain confused all the time, which is just so stereotypical to put on a bisexual character, especially since he doesn't even get to come out. As for T, I would say his case is the worst. He's left by Pooh, who falls in love with a girl and spends the rest of his screen time in season 1 being heartbroken, which is understandable. In season 2, Pooh uses him and has sex with him, which causes him to spend the rest of season 2 being a mess again. Then a freshman is introduced into his life and they get close, and the viewer almost think that finally T is gonna have a happy relationship. But nope, he gets rejected and spends the rest of the season being heartbroken like he's been for the past 2 seasons. So even though the audience feels for T and love him, this still feels like the epitome of the sad gay trope for me. So the last character is Ter. Contrarily to Pooh or T, is not a main character but a very secondary one. He only gets one storyline towards the end of season 3, and it happens with Nun, who was the guy who broke T's heart. While Nun admits he likes a girl, Ter's face becomes livid. We learn that he always thought Nun and him were special friends and were basically dating. He comes out and confesses his feelings, but gets rejected. For me, that second storyline was just bullshit. Like, yes, it made my heart ache and I love when it does that, but it was basically the same exact storyline as C's storyline in season 2. And it's even the same character who rejected T and Ter. And I get that Bang Titi is cute, but still, what was the point of making him a gay heartbreaker? So, as you can see, the gay and bi representations of this show were clearly disappointing. That being said, it was still the first time it happened on such a mainstream level in Thailand, and Hormones was such a huge success in Thailand that I'm sure this show opened quite a few minds. So I do feel like all I do on this channel is talk about Lovesick, but we gotta give credit where credit is due. Lovesick was the first mainstream Thai BL and the first BL to be incredibly successful. It's kind of the first one to really launch a BL fandom and kind of shape the industry as it is today. Could any other series have been the first mainstream Thai BL? Sure. But when I think about it, it's not the fact that it was the first that impresses me the most. Its quality of writing for the time is what impresses me, because frankly Lovesick is more woke and just better written than some very recent BLs. Sure, it had its problems, such as the I don't like guys but I like you trope, but I still consider that Poon and No had the best communication in a ship. They always talked through their fights as soon as they happened, clearly expressed their feelings to each other, and were very honest. And honestly, that's kind of rare to see. Apart from that, Lovesick also had a girlfriend character who wasn't a dick or cliche in the form of Yuri. She comes off as annoying at first, but as the show progresses, she is shown as a lovely, genuine woman who stands by No till the very end. Even characters like Aim or Jeed, who are a lot more annoying, are still given redemption arcs towards the end of the story. The quality of Lovesick's writing at the time is what makes it stand standouts and ultimately the first BL to change the game. Now, if Lovesick was popular, SOTUS was just on a whole other level. Up until this year with Together, it was the most successful BL. And SOTUS is pretty special to me considering it's my first BL and the reason why I ended up in this fandom. Now with a step back, I've realized that SOTUS is not revolutionary in terms of acting or writing. But I really think what made SOTUS and now Together so successful was their accessibility. More than that, SOTUS came at a time where the BL demand wasn't as saturated as it is today, which is also why Together's humongous success is still a mystery to me. So in 2016, there were like 6 BLs coming out a year. Nowadays we must be at 40 or 50 a year. So it was very easy for SOTUS to stand out at the time, which was made extra easy with the accessibility of it. So people saw the gay content they were craving for. They wanted to watch it. They typed the show's name on Google. They saw it was on YouTube. They watched it. It's as simple as that. And that's when GMMTV's genius marketing kicked in. Up until then, GMMTV had already been putting their shows on YouTube, but it was only straight romances. SOTUS was their first BL and it was successful immediately, putting them on the map for many people. And that's how many people, including me, joined the BL fandom in the first place. One very successful show was enough to put BL on the map. So let's applaud SOTUS for being iconic and kind of making the BL fandom what it is today. I just wanted to briefly mention Addicted Heroine, which was the first kind of very mainstream Chinese BL and was absolutely huge. It was so successful, in fact, that it made the Chinese government ban any explicit gay representation in series and movies, making the planned second season of it impossible. The actors were even prohibited of meeting outside of work. So while the show does have consent issues and is not the best out there, I do think we should think about the fact that it's the only mainstream Chinese BL out there. So even though I don't consider Diary of Tootsies a BL, since the gay love story is not the main focus of the show, I still want to give it credit for honestly being the best LGBTQ+ representation in mainstream Thai media. It portrays the 3 gay men and 1 lesbian characters very well, giving them deep and interesting storylines. Sadly, this one hasn't really changed the game because in 2020, apparently, gay and bi representation is still not prevalent in BL. But we gotta upload it for being iconic and great. So Japan has been producing BL for a while. Yet there wasn't really a mainstream super successful BL series in Japan before Ossan's Love. Ossan's Love was so successful in Japan and internationally that it even got a sequel movie. And then a completely unnecessary remake where Maki wasn't even here, so why should we care? In a way, Ossan's Love isn't really that different plot-wise to other Japanese BLs. It's honestly pretty basic, but I love it so much. The characters are hilarious and over the top, but still get emotional and beautiful moments. I just loved it and I'm really glad that it's the BL show that got the most love from the Japanese public. Do I even need to tell you about the humongous success of Together? Much like SOTUS, and even more so now with the oversaturated BL market, it's not the first BL and it will not be the last. Yet it managed to reach a success unprecedented from any other BL from any Asian country. In fact, I would probably compare it more to the success of EVAC in 2016 with Scam. And I'm still trying to figure out why Together got so successful when, let's be honest, in terms of quality of writing, acting, everything, is just equal to every other GMMTV BL. Also, I much prefer this wholesome BL be the most popular rather than a show with sexual assaults. So even though I'm still trying to figure out why, there's no denying that much like SOTUS, Together is the show that brought the most new people to the fandom. For the longest time, Korean BLs were produced by independent studios such as Strongberry's Long Time No See. And Long Time No See is so lovely and did garner some success, but it was ultimately undermined by the fact that it was not distributed apart from buying it on Vimeo. Where Your Eyes Linger though, while not from a huge production company, did get a great distribution deal with Viki, which is basically the Netflix for K-dramas. So it was really surprising to me knowing that about 75% of Thai drama fans are also K-drama fans, that it would be be a great success. The show is kind of basic but with a twist, which actually reminds me of Long Time No See, but it is very lovely and totally deserves the success. The positive response it got encouraged the production company to make another BL, which is called Mr. Heart, and while it did not get as much of a huge success, and for me it was a lot less good, it was still very lovely. So we're finally getting somewhere with Korean BL, and I'm really glad to know that it was thanks to Where Your Eyes Linger. Honestly, this is kind of the show that inspired this whole video. For me, it's absolutely mind-boggling to see how the Filipino BL industry has exploded over the course of 3 to 6 months. I mean, comparing it to the Thai industry that started with one BL in 2014, Lovesick, then progressively released more and more, we have literally gone from 0 to 100 in 6 months with Filipino BLs. But it's not that surprising either. I mean, if you look 5 seconds at the comment under a Thai BL, you will see dozens of comments coming from Filipino fans. So I have always been aware that Filipinos were huge consumers of BL. That being said, I really think it's the huge success of Together which brought a lot more fans to the fandom, and the creation of Together that really made the Filipino BL industry start to happen. Game Boys was really the first Filipino BL to really find its audience. Probably because it was posted on YouTube, so the accessibility was just as great as a GMM TV show. But also the quality and production of the show was top-notch for such a small production company happening under lockdown. Yes, it has been followed by equally as good Filipino BLs, but I do believe it's Game Boys that really encouraged other small production companies to create their own BL, since it showed that a Filipino BL could be as successful as a Thai one. So for me, in terms of Filipino BLs, Game Boys was really the trailblazer. So that was all the BLs I think were really game changers in one way or another. They're not necessarily my favorite BLs, but I wanted to give credit where credit is due. Anyways, I'm gonna go watch My Gear and Your Gown, and I hope you have a good day. So it was very easy for SOTUS to...